Hey, I'm Scott.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Doxologic, where we help you think with your Bible.
Okay, moving on. This one's a little bit longer, so bear with me. I have questions regarding different Christian denominations that seem similar to one another, i.e. Lutheran, Baptist, Methodist, Calvinist, etc. How are we to interact with one another in fellowship or judgment if we differ on the things such as age of baptism, secured salvation, and other things interwoven with one's particular denomination? Does it actually matter so long as we all believe the gospel?
Well, that's, first of all, not all those are denominations.
Mm-hmm.
I think he slipped Calvinism or she, whoever this is, slipped some terms in that there may be denominations that hold to Calvinism, as we would generally understand that term theologically, but that's not a denomination, just for the record. And I think this is pertaining to how do people from different denominational backgrounds that all coincide in a church? How is that to take place? Because that's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
Do they even have the categories for where do they fall on the theological spectrum between Methodists, Lutheran,
Baptist,
Baptist. There's types of Methodism. There's Wesleyan Methodism. There's Whitfieldian Methodism onto Calvinistic Methodism. So what I would say is the gospel is the rallying ground for the Christian, but there's a reason why there's a whole bunch of churches, because there are what I would call important, even distinct, by necessity need to make this clear point in terms of doctrine that's not addressing whether or not someone is a Christian, but addressing something so significant that you wouldn't be able to fellowship in the same church, possibly as a result. And so I would see this as a theological triage issue. And in a non-denominational church like Doxa, there's some flex there that wouldn't exist as much in a Presbyterian church or in a strictly Baptist church. We're Baptistic, but we have a different take on those who come from a Reformed background, a Presbyterian background, even their view of, covenantal theology leading to paedobaptism, and can they be a member of our church if they were to hold convictionally to Reformed theology all the way to paedobaptism? And we have a take on that would be different than what the Baptists would do.
Right.
And so you have to make those calls based on the issue and their level of importance, but it does draw distinctive lines.
Read the first part of the question for me, please, again.
How are we to interact with one another in fellowship or judgment if we differ on things? I'm wondering,
there's two ways to see it. There's within the same church from different backgrounds, and certainly Doxa has got many different backgrounds. Then there's the how do I think about Christian denominations as I drive past them or know neighbors that are Lutheran versus Baptist versus Presbyterian. And I don't know if those are too tremendously different, but thinking about the different churches and how do I would lean to being charitable, first of all, as opposed to judgmental. Good wanting word. To be charitable as much as possible, not knowing probably a lot of those people all that personally. No, if you have family members who are staunchly in different denominations, you probably are going to have some interesting scriptural arguments, and you're going to be interpreting either the influence of a certain passage or maybe what you see as being primary, right? Like what theological triage, if we thought of 4 categories of just, tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, as I've expressed in times past, there's, die for, you're not in Christianity. Like these
tier 1.
Tier 1 is like die for. You are not in Christianity without these truths about the triune God and the nature of Jesus Christ and his work, and really by grace alone, through faith alone, justified by faith alone, things like this. Tier 2 are serious issues for which we would end up in different churches, but are ultimately not matters of if you're a Christian or not. Then there's things that you would just be in the same church and you would argue about, because you might take them seriously, but you could stay in the same church. Then there's tier 4, which is more like just decide. Like there's either mystery or uncertainty, or good men and women disagree on things. So the concern is what's in level 2.
Yeah.
What are the things that are worth separating churches over without throwing the stones, if you will, of, that you're just out of the faith? And that's where there's unfortunately disagreement, even in what is there.
Sure.
And so we want to be charitable. And if the person ended with, so long as we believe the gospel, the difficult assumption is that that's the case all the time, because some of the particularly Lutheran and Presbyterian, and I'm sure others also, are really false churches now, and that's a tragic thing to have to say, but the liberalism and the denial of scriptural authority and the inclusivity of just every lifestyle they don't believe the same gospel. The name is on the wall still. This thing looks like a church building still, but it's a false church. And so that's a difficult word, and I'm not the arbiter of who all of them are in our area. That's not, I don't want that position. I'm not in that position. We have to understand that these denominations, sometimes we go to that level as well, where there's not actually even a true proclamation of the gospel in said church.
Yeah. And I would add to the theological triage. Thank you for breaking that down. I said it, you broke it down. I appreciate that. Is to say, and we know this, that someone can hold to, say, a tier 2 thing and have it be such a big thing to them. So it's not just the tiers theologically, it's how strong do you hold these particular things, right? And if it grinds your gears based on your level of conviction so much that you're clashing with the church you're in, you're clashing with the people that predominantly leadership that make up the church, that might be an indicator for you that might not be your church home, And it doesn't mean you've disunified with the church. We just simply hold some second, tertiary level doctrine so strongly that you need to, in good conscience, go to somewhere where they hold that perspective. And we are unified in so much in the gospel, providing that, the churches aren't what you were talking about, have so liberalized that they're not even standing upon the gospel. Yes, we're together for the gospel, but there is reason that there are different churches. And I would say it's not just the triage, but it's how strong some people hold those things. Some people can hold it and go, you know what? I can come to a non-denominational church and be okay with, the level of my conviction there. That doesn't become a hobby horse where I'm trying to force it everywhere and convince everybody. I can hold that, but I can also be okay that the church maybe doesn't, or that the predominant people I interact with in the church don't, and be okay. And if you're not in that place, then maybe is something where the denominational piece would lead you elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's good. Thanks, guys. You've been listening to Doxologic, a podcast by Doxa Church in Rockland, California. To learn more, visit doxachurch.net.